I mean, I played baseball. I went hunting. I did all the things to please my dad because I wanted nothing more than my dad's approval because he was and still is the greatest influence on me, one of the greatest men I've ever known. Just a brilliant man, a very strong man. But I knew that even though he loved me and showed his love for me all the time, I knew that he didn't approve of me. And that was a wound that I carried the rest of my life and had everything to do with me moving back.
Speaking of your dad, we do need to say, as well as being a brilliant, he was also part of you came out recently, part of the
Yeah,
KKK.
in the 1960s.
What did that mean in the 1960s? I mean, presumably early
Yeah, I think it
1960s.
was
What was he doing?
here's the thing, Andrew. I suspected this was true, but my dad and I had to stop talking about race at some point early in my college career because we would always just fight about it. And I never really probed deeply because I kind of didn't want to know, but I knew that so many of those white Protestant middle class and lower middle class men like my dad, were involved in the Klan in those days. And it turned out that the local judge was, I found this out many years later, was actually the head of the Klan. Now, this is in a parish, that is to say, county in Louisiana, where over half the people were black. And I can barely imagine what it was like to try to get justice in a place like that. But I was born in 67, so I was in the first generation in our town to go through fully integrated public schools. And it's weird to think about now, but we never talked about segregation, the civil rights movement, none of that. And I think that probably there was a spoken or maybe an unspoken understanding among local black and white leaders that if we're going to make this thing work, we're just not going to we just can't talk about it. So I didn't, after my dad and I fought and fought and fought in the way that one does with one's father when one is an ardent liberal teenager. And you could have been a right wing Reaganite then, but if you were liberal on race, then you were a liberal. But it just,
But hold on, being a liberal or a conservative on race does not the KKK are a different order
oh, yeah.
of so, I mean, you said and I don't wanna hop on this, but it just fascinates me. So, you kind of feared that your dad might be doing this kind of
Yes.
thing. Presumably, arguments you had with him about race would have had him expressing what? What kind of things would he say?
You liberals don't know what it was like, you this, you that. And there wasn't even a real argument there. It was, I can look back on it now and see that for my dad, it was less about race itself than about, I can't believe my flesh and blood, the boy who was named after myself, because my name is Ray Oliver Dreer Jr., actually disagrees with me on that. And that's how my dad and I would argue about anything. I mean, like I said, he was a brilliant man, first in his family to go to college, but he was so domineering that it was his way or the highway, as we say. And so we put race aside, as a lot of white Southerners of my generation have had to do with their families, just for the sake of keeping family relations. He died in 2015, and I said, well, I guess I'll never know. Just before Christmas, some journalists found in an FBI file that an informant informed the FBI that my father gave them my father's name as a list of people he thought were in the Klan. Now, the informant could have been lying about it, but I think it probably was true. And of course, it's extremely painful to learn that. And I talked to my confessor about it. I'm an Orthodox Christian, and my confessor said, you have to pray for your father's soul every day for the rest of your life. And I do that. But for me, Andrew, it's a kind of thing where this is part of being a Southerner too, at least in my generation, is having to realize that your relatives, people and your neighbors, the people of an older generation you grew up loving and honoring and learning from, that most of them believed horrible things about black people. And in the case of my father, it seems, did horrible things too. And it's a terrible thing to have to try to come to terms with.